Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the World Urban Forum for this invitation, for the chance to speak to you and share some of the ideas that we have about Habitat 3 and the new urban agenda. Obviously, because of the fact that we in Quito hosted Habitat 3, we feel we have a special responsibility on the correct implementation of the new urban agenda. And this is really a process that started before Habitat 3. I think that the road towards Habitat 3 was a very special one and gave the conference and the new urban agenda a special character. It was the first time that we as local governments, as local authorities, had the chance to really contribute to the construction of the new urban agenda and the document that was going to be approved on Habitat 3. I think this was a great step forward in order to really take into account the local perspective from local authorities and not only the one from national governments. So I think that was a very special feature in the road towards Habitat 3. Actually, it was very interesting to witness and participate in the global task force which unified different networks of cities and mayors who were very actively participating in the construction of the new urban agenda. Then, when the conference took place in October 2016, I think that even though the new urban agenda was a great asset in building upon previous documents like the Sendai framework, like the SDGs, like the Paris agreements, and I think that was very positive because it delivered a very clear framework for local action and also bestowed local governments with many more responsibilities that they had in the past. I think now the huge challenge that was posed after Habitat 3 was how these local governments would be able to implement those new responsibilities that are bestowed through the new urban agenda. How are we going to finance those actions? And I'm talking obviously from the local authority perspective as mayor of Quito. How are we going to finance those additional responsibilities that we have to fulfill through the new urban agenda? How are we going to actually have the proper legal competences to implement those new kind of actions? And how are we going to plan them in an effective way for the future? I think these are the three main challenges that Habitat 3 delivered in terms of local action for regional and local governments. But I think those are very exciting challenges. And I think that we as mayors are very keen and enthusiastic about how to really fulfill them. And we're already working on that. One of the key questions for these closing remarks was, what is Quito doing to implement the new urban agenda? What are we actually pursuing right now to achieve the goals that are posed on the new urban agenda? And let me tell you that last October 2017, we had the Habitat +1 event on Quito. So we had the opportunity to discuss the steps that we have been making, not only as a hosting city for Habitat 3, but also because of the fact that Quito is playing a very active role in many networks of cities. Like it was said before, we are we're presently participating as at the co-president city of UCLG. Quito is also a member of the executive global board of ICLEI, and also is part of the global board of the new Global Covenant of Mayors. So that has given us the opportunity to speak out, to share our perspective on the new urban agenda and the challenges that cities have for the future. We discussed this during the Habitat +1 event in Quito last October, and that also was the opportunity to share some of our progress. During that event, for example, we formally presented the 2040 vision for Quito. And this 2040 vision for our city include many of the principles and objectives that are part of the new urban agenda. Of course, the other documents that were previously approved, like the Sendai framework, the Paris agreements, and some others. And this was a very interesting exercise for urban planning. And since this is a session about urban planning, let me share with you some of the features of the process that we delivered in order to design this 2040 urban development strategy for our city. First of all, it was a very participatory process. We decided to invite universities and civil society organizations, as well as people representing different neighborhoods of the city, to actively participate in thinking Quito for the future. So this was a very, very exciting process with a very high level of citizen participation, which contribute to make it a vision that can be shared by different sectors of Quito's society, and therefore it could be easily implemented in the future, because we wanted to bestow it with a feel of appropriation for everyone. The other thing was that we took advantage of the fact of what I just said, the fact that Quito is very active in different networks of cities that provide with the chance of sharing good experiences and also best practices, but also to learn about what is wrong and not to do it again. So one of the things that I want to stress today is the importance of strengthening the links among cities in terms of sharing of experiences and best practices. So we took advantage of that as well. The other thing was that we believe that urban planning should be a tool that might prevent from political changes to interfere with the execution of long-term policies for cities. What I'm trying to say is that obviously cities are dependent on political atmospheres, and like it was just said before, that might change from one term to the other, and that might harm the way cities go towards an adequate urban planning process and implementation. So in that regard, designing long-term urban planning tools, like for example the one we delivered in Quito with a 2040 vision, can set a path of key things that should be respected, even though there might be some changes in the political scenario for cities and local governments. So that's also a principle that is part of the new urban agenda, and that should be traduced in concrete urban development tools with a medium and long-term vision. The other thing that we presented during the Habitat Plus One event in Quito last October was our resiliency strategy. Quito is part of the 100 Resilient Cities program from the Rockefeller Foundation, and we have been working very closely with them in order to design this resiliency strategy that also go very closely with the new urban agenda and, of course, the 2040 vision for Quito. We also presented the risk management plan for Quito for the next 20 years. So we are taking all these tools, the 2040 vision, the resiliency strategy, the risk management plan, as sources for public policy design and implementation within the framework of the new urban agenda. That is, we are taking some of the key issues that are addressed by the new urban agenda: resiliency, urban planning, sustainable development strategy, and about which I will talk later. And we are mixing all them because we believe they have a multidisciplinary scheme that should be taken into account as a transversal axis for the whole public policy design and implementation in our municipality. Another key feature of the implementation of the new urban agenda, in our view, is open data. Open data give citizens the chance to actively participate in the construction of a new city and being part to fulfill the right to the city, which is something that is also mentioned in the New Urban Agenda and that we feel is particularly important. So the only way to encourage citizens' participation is to give them the necessary tools to do so. And the only way to achieve that is through transparent and open data. So we also launched the open data platform for Quito, which, for example, is currently being used for participatory budgeting construction, and also for performance-based budget analysis through civil society and academia. So that's also a tool that we want to strengthen in the future, but we have given a very good first step. Let me also share with you something that for us is particularly important within the framework on the New Urban Agenda, and it's sustainability and climate change action. I think those are key issues that should be addressed from cities. As you know, the commitments that were made by countries through the Paris Agreement would never be fulfilled without an active and effective participation from cities. Most of greenhouse emissions are taking place in cities. So if we want to fulfill the Paris Agreement, then we need to build a very strong vertical integration, and we have to design a strategy for NDC's fulfillment right away. We cannot lose time. And in that regard, once again, we have to come up with effective tools for financing climate actions in cities. We have to come up with tools to stimulate a much more active role from the private sector in financing climate change actions in cities. And we have, like I just said, we have to build strong vertical integration in order to do so. Once again, I think all these issues that I've been talking about today are very well interconnected. For example, Quito, since 56% of our greenhouse emissions come from our mobility system, we are very focused on targeting effective mobility actions. In that regard, we are currently building the first subway line in the city and in the country. We're also building a Summit is to deliver this call to action, which basically consists of identifying projects that could be scalable and replicable. We have talked to international financing institutions like the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the French development agencies, and some others, in order to establish fast-track financing lines for climate actions in cities. But the first thing is to come up with emblematic projects. And that's why, since Quito was the first city to be selected as a World Heritage City from the UNESCO in 1978, we decided to launch a project that is called Historical Districts Go Clean 2020. And we are putting our historical district as an example. We have made a commitment to get to the year 2020 with our historical district only having clean public transportation. And that's a project that, of course, we want to expand throughout the city in the future. But it's also a project that could be replicable in many other cities of the world, to send a message that it's possible to actually have concrete areas of cities clean, with zero emissions, at least from our mobility systems. So that's something that, of course, we have to build with international financial institutions like the ones I just mentioned. I think that there's a good chance to go ahead with this initiative, and it would be really great if you can send the message out about the role that cities can and want to play in this regard, with concrete, effective, emblematic, and replicable actions like the one I just mentioned. But it's really important to bring everyone into the table, to build strong partnerships. The role of private sector is also key in this regard. And just to finish, I want to say that our idea is to keep pushing this initiative to get to the G20 meeting in Buenos Aires next October, having already an important group of cities that will be part of this Historical Districts Go Clean 2020 initiative, and also with concrete financing tools already delivered by that time, and with a strong coordination with national governments and international organizations. I want to thank you very much for your attention. I don't know if I have the chance to answer some questions that you might have. I will be happy to do so.